Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming to this lunch AI talk. I'm really excited about having the speakers on the stage and being able to show you guys what AI the value it can bring in your distribution centers. I'd like to introduce our three panelists here. Joel Garcia has 25 years of experience in supply chain transformations. Joel has worked with many clients in a variety of industries, such as Levi's, Zumiez, and Kaiser Permanente, optimizing their supply chain and distribution operations. Rajiv, here closest to me, over 20 years delivering big data, analytics, and AI solutions at Albertsons, Marriott, and Mondelez. And then last but not least, Santiago, over 20 years of experience at the intersection of supply chain and analytics, working with companies like Oracle, C3 AI, and his very own startup. So I'm going to kick off this panel with a market question. And Joel, I'm going to point this to you. In your experience, what are you seeing happening with AI in distribution centers?
Well, we certainly are seeing, if you think AI is coming or wondering if it's here yet, it really is, and we're already seeing some practical applications, and we've implemented some solutions already where we're seeing value. There's a big push for this to happen, and we know it's happening because it's estimated that by 2033, the AI warehouse management space is going to reach over $70 billion, right? We also can see that operators are continuing to be pushed to manage their throughput, manage their capacity. At the same time, you have to speed the order processing. You got to get your orders out faster, and you're having to manage it all by reducing human error. You also have to manage your labor. So that pressure, along with the market opportunity, I think is really creating a perfect storm. And if you're out there looking for solutions like this, you probably notice that there are many solutions out there. You're being bombarded, and the tough part of being an operator right now in a distribution center is really understanding what will work, what won't work, and what you can implement and what you'll get value from. Okay.
So AI is such a buzzword too, right, guys? Like, I think the audience, I'm bombarded constantly with AI stuff, and I don't even know where to start. But I think for us here at ProMat, the real question is AI really adding any value to our distribution centers?
Yeah. We are seeing that AI solutions are being implemented, and we've implemented these solutions to really help automate repetitive tasks. And that's one thing that typically gets tagged as an AI solution. How do I automate a repetitive task? But really the additional value comes when you start looking at, as an example, can it automatically release a wave for me? And we all have, if you're familiar with WMS systems, you know that there are wave templates that you can create, and those have been around for 25 years. But can an AI solution help you adapt that wave template based on the demand that you have on your specific order profile that day to select a better wave with a more optimized pick path, as an example, or a set of SKUs that have some affinity to them so that your efficiency increases? Or can it match the labor that you have in certain areas of the distribution center and the resources that you have available, whether it's a human resource or a digital worker or a fixed piece of automation or a robot, right? And as we add these advanced technologies into the warehouse, orchestrating those gets more difficult. So AI can help you do that. And really, lastly, is can it help me on the opposite side? If I can't change my order profile and I can't change my wave template, can I reassign workers dynamically throughout the facility? And can it help me do that? And we'll show you a small, very simple example later in the presentation on how that works and some of the things that we've done. But those are really the value that it's bringing to the distribution center.
It's awesome. So all of us here today, right, we're going from paper to platform. And I think what you guys want to hear are the pointers and the tips of like how they can get there. So in your experience, what changes need to happen to shift to an AI-ready distribution network?
Yeah. You know, the thing that I was surprised at when we started implementing is that the same problems that we've had for 25 years, 30 years are still there. And the reason we call this session paper to platform is that, you know, I was around when the promise of a WMS was going to get you completely off of paper, right? Oh, put this system in, you'll get rid of the paper pick list. And I think that was achieved about 80%. There's still things out there that aren't done yet. So there's this process of digitizing your assets. If you still have paper assets, if you're not getting EDI, if you're not getting, you know, advanced ship notices, and somebody in the distribution has to manually key in or create an inbound order to receive that, it's going to be very difficult for you to take advantage of AI technologies. Those are precursors to AI. So one of the recommendations that I have, and the things that we've seen, is we have to go back with these clients, say, have you digitized the pieces of information that you're going to need to then have a system make decisions for you? And if you haven't done that, that's a good place to start, is just take the clock back, go finish those things that you thought you would get done and we all thought we'd be past now. Because we've had some phases, right? We started with, hey, let's eliminate paper with a WMS. Then we went to control towers and visibility and all these things. And those fell short to some degree because that precursor wasn't done to begin with. Now that reliance on data has become even more important. So one of the things that I truly believe is that data cleanliness, that the data discipline, and then digitizing your assets that you will need for decision making are super important.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, like a lot. And I think a lot of us are overwhelmed by even where to start. What should we focus on first? How do we think about it?
Really, I think that AI is also, you know, if I look at AI and I look at the tools, and if I'm running a distribution center, I want to focus on the things that'll help me. You know, if I look at if I'm a manager, right, and I have to balance labor, I have to understand if, as an example, is my sorter being choked or starved. So I have all these things that I have to balance throughout the day. When you think about an AI engine, they have to do the same thing. We have what I call air gap interfaces to all of these assets. We can see them, we can hear them, we can read reports. So we're interfaced with those assets and those resources. One of the key things about an AI technology is you have to start integrating. You know, if you have different pieces of automation and they're all running on different WECSs or WESs or WMSs, you have to start pulling that information into a central orchestration system, right? AI cannot make decisions if it can't affect them. And it might have visibility, that's a control tower, but can then in turn affect that work that's inside that system? Or will you have to go change it on your own, right? So I see that we have to connect, we need good data, we have to have digital assets, right? Because one of the biggest values of these systems is really the tribal knowledge that you have in a person that manages your distribution center. A big problem that we have today with the turnover of labor is that you get somebody who is now the perfect guy or lady that's running your distribution center, and then they leave. And then you have to retrain somebody. And that happens from managers all the way down to the low-skilled workers. If you get that knowledge in an AI system and that's integrated well, one of the massive values of AI is that knowledge stays somewhere in your organization. It doesn't walk out the door with your resources. Right?
So we have a little example. We're gonna, it's lunchtime. It's day one. We want to have a little fun on stage. We're gonna do a little role playing. And I think a lot of you in the audience will probably relate to this role play that we'll do. And we're going to show you what AI can really do for your operations.
Yeah.
Right?
So this is a very simple example. So if you're a serious operator out there, you might think, well, this is kind of simple, but really, it's about managing the simple stuff first, and then growing as you get complexity. So I know when I had an opportunity to run a distribution center, I'd walk down the dock, on the outbound dock, the shipping dock, and I would notice a pallet on a Monday. And then I'd walk by on Wednesday and realize that pallet is still there. Why is this pallet still here? And then maybe it's still Thursday, and then I forgot, and you wonder how many other things have been here since Monday and why. So I'm going to say, Sharon, what's all that freight? What are those pallets doing, and why are they still there? Right? That's the question call it a VP or a director is going to walk by and then pull the manager and over and say, what's all this stuff? Why is it still here?
Yeah.
Right,
So I'm going to be like, I get 50 reports a day. I cannot sift through all of them, and Excel crashes every time I open one of them. Come on, how many people have had that issue? For sure. I see some nodding heads, yes. What am I going to do? I got to do this better. So I'm going to call my buddy Rajiv over in IT, and I'm going to be like, Rajiv, oh my God, dude, I need your help. There has to be a better way to do this.
There absolutely is, Sharon. So there is this new technological trend in AI/ML. It's called generative AI. And it can analyze all your data and all your reports just like a human being, and in seconds instead of hours. And next time Joel calls you up, you will be able to give him an answer in minutes by consulting your genius sidekick or your digital twin called generative AI.
So I don't.
And in fact,
Okay, go
I
ahead.
can make it even better.
Ooh.
I can actually make it do decisions on your parts with this new concept called agentic AI. It can actually execute decisions on your part as it sees problems in the warehouse.
Whoa, that sounds amazing. So I don't have to write any code. I don't have to run any SQL. I just ask it a question.
Exactly. You
All
ask
right.
it a question, you can type it in, or you can speak it out.
And you have a proof of concept that you'd like to show me right now, right?
Yeah. So let's go through this proof of concept around generative AI and reporting in warehouses.
So yeah, I know I have all this freight on my dock. Now I know how many drivers I need. I know if they're floor loaded. I know I have all this data. I actually also know about ASAP orders because I get ASAP orders all the time, and then I have to reprioritize, which is amazing. And then I also know if I can do some cross-docking for the day so I can be a little bit more efficient and get those pallets off the floor that Joel's screaming at me about. That's amazing. So can it actually show me, like, give me a dashboard as well? Can it schedule it for me so I don't have to do it myself?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You don't even actually have to build a dashboard. You just tell it and it will paint a bar chart, a pie chart, whatever you want.
And then it'll actually just send it to me in my email inbox, and then I can change it whenever I need to as well.
Exactly.
And adjust it.
Yep.
Wow. Awesome. Okay. So that end scene. You guys did a great job. So this is amazing of what it can do. I think it's really going to transform what we do in operations. 2 questions. How do we know the data is right? And how do we even start to get to this level of AI?
So I leave the answer of how do we know whether the data is right to Rajiv. He has a lot to tell us about that, but I'm going to start with the transformation, right? I've been in this space for over 20 years. I've seen many organizations struggling with the adoption of AI or digital transformation. From my perspective, what I've seen is that many organizations tend to have issues because they don't consider this to be an organizational transformation process. This is like lean management, and I know many of you may have implemented lean management initiatives in your organizations. So it's basically the same concept. You need to start with some momentum. You need to identify what is the low-hanging fruit, what are the easy projects that you can execute. Then you also need to think a little bit of ROI, because everybody's talking about AI these days, But in the end, if you don't have an ROI, a clear equation to get results and financial results from your execution, you are bound to lose your support, your internal support from your organization. And it's not only that, right? You need to have some executive support right from the start. You don't need to wait until the projects are executed. You need to know who are going to be your internal champions, just like in lean management. Then, again, just like in lean management, you need to think of who is going to be on your COE, on your execution team, right? This needs to be a balanced team, a team who knows the operation, who knows your processes very well, but also understands your systems very well, understands how the processes maps to the systems. And usually, ideally, you even have some people in that team who have both skill sets. These are people that you could even get from external sources, from external consultancies. So that is how I would start, right? Trying to get all of that available. And beyond just lean management type of challenges, you also have to think of challenges that are unique to the world of digital transformation and data, which are garbage in, garbage out, right? It doesn't matter how well you do your projects. If your data that you are feeding it with is bad, then the results are going to be bad. And I know Rajiv has a lot of stories to tell us about that.
Thank you, Santiago. So I think it all starts with adopting a data-driven mindset in an organization. Okay? Data quality, data preparation is never an accident. For most organizations, what I see is they start off with getting a chief data and AI officer, and then building a team which is just totally focused on data. And I think that's always a good starting point for any organization, making sure that you gather your arms around the data first. Yeah? Now, what is involved in building this data-driven organization? This so-called data center of excellence usually has 4 pillars. There is the data strategy portion, which is the one which does the ROI that you talked about, Santiago. Yeah? So the data strategy people look at all the data assets in the organization, come up with low-hanging fruit to prove things out, and also figure out from an ROI perspective what are the first 2-3 projects they'll do and what are the next 10. Yeah? And also how the success of these projects is measured. So that's data strategy. Then there is data analytics, right? And there are new ways of doing data analytics in the world of Gen AI. And data analytics is really about realizing the value of your data logged in many different systems. And then there is the data science part of it. And the data science part of it actually goes more than just unlocking the value of data in your current systems, just the current operational data. It actually looks into the future. It is predictive and it is generative. And then finally, there is the data engineering portion. And the data engineering portion is the glue to all of this. So data engineering actually does all the heavy work around data quality, data preparation, data management, data governance. So typical data center of excellences, it is not unusual to see that data engineering is your biggest organization, because these are the people who can bring out the value of the data. So it might be 60% data engineering, 20% data analytics, about 10% data science actually, and 10% data strategy. But preparing your data is the biggest job, and then also verifying whether the results you're getting are good or not, right? And you talked about it before, Sharon. How do I know the results are real? Well, you actually have to test the results out. There is something called a test data set, and there's something called a validation data set, and then you have to constantly monitor the results and make sure that your model, which you have put in place, hasn't drifted. So your data people actually understand these concepts. So building this data-driven organization with the data mindset is key to realizing the benefits of AI, ML, and analytics.
Wow. Yeah, it's a big organization. Joel, I'd love to hear from your point of view how that fits in with warehouse operations.
And I focused a lot on the real, boots on the ground distribution centers, and what these guys are saying really rings a bell because it really is about data. And I'll give you an example of a organization that wanted to implement AI. They came to us and said, we want to implement AI. And we started looking at why they wanted to do this. So these guys had a very, very poor item master. And because they had a poor item master, their put away wasn't working, palletization wasn't working, their cartonization wasn't working. A lot of the things in the distribution center, as you guys know, rely on that dim weights in the item master to make decisions. None of that was currently working for them. But they thought that by buying an AI tool that we're going to be able to solve all that. And in fact, so you can see in that very simple example that it would be a system that would just create some bad decisions because it was going to be based on really bad information. They were just going to do it a lot faster than they were doing it. They were actually going to do bad things faster than they were currently doing. So they didn't understand that the value of data integrity and the value of having those assets digitized so that they can then move on to this next phase that's AI. So this is why I keep, as I get to work with operators, I start to wonder and caution in how fast they can move into this space because they haven't done the fundamentals that we should have done 20 years ago to even run the systems you already have well today. Right?
So that's one pitfall. It's a pretty big one, right? Kind of not understanding that. Do you guys have any other tips or pitfalls that you've seen in your past experience that you'd want to share with the audience? Like things that people have done wrong when they're thinking about putting in data and AI?
I mean, it's connected to the fact that this conversation about data. I have personally been involved in several projects about predictive maintenance, where I'm being involved. They told me, yes, we have this new set of sensors that we have just implemented, and we would like to start using them right away to do predictive maintenance. And I say, okay, where's the history of those sensors? And they said, what do you mean history? We just implemented them. Well, if you don't have history, then how am I supposed to map those events to the sensor readings that you were having at that time, right? So these are the kind of, it may be kind of obvious, but it's not so clear when you start. So just be aware of the fact that if you are talking about AI, data is king, and you have to be prepared to have the data in the right place. And even beyond that, right? Let's say you have the data, but nobody's consuming it. If nobody's consuming your data sensors, most likely the sensors are working wrong. So just be aware of that, right? So if you are going to start with AI, why don't you start with having somebody take a look at those sensors, and maybe they might have some business rules that they can implement with that, and it can get you 50% of the way. Then you can start your conversation about AI.
And that's an excellent point, Santiago. So in many cases, you don't really have data sets to start off with, right? And in the world of AI ML, you've got to train your data on existing data sets. And that's why I always say, don't get logged into a particular way of doing things. It's a combination of many different things. So there's the world of optimization, maths, which can help you where you don't have data, right? So it is a coming together of many things: optimization, AI ML, Gen AI, agentic AI, and you need to adopt that holistic mindset when you're devising solutions than just be logged, I'm just going to do Gen AI.
Okay, it's a lot to unpack, and what we'd like to do is just, if you guys could help us summarize the key takeaways. I'd love to start with Joel first on what should this audience leave with today?
Yeah, I'm going to sound repetitive on the start. If you look at this slide that we have up in the journey, I talked about digitization, and it's really digitizing your assets. If you have paper still floating around the DC, that's okay. You're going to have labels, you're going to have things like that, but if you're going to rely on the information that's on a report that comes in paper, maybe it's your drayage report from your carrier that brings in your containers. If you're going to rely on that to make an AI decision, then you need to digitize that asset. Digitalization is then taking those assets that are digitized, and that's when we look at this. This is control towers visibility, advanced visibility. That's what lies here in that digitalization. This is our organizations that are already using some of the information that's digitized to start presenting that information. And then when you get up to the transition, the transformation way at the top, that's when you really start to have intelligent workflows, agents that are out there helping you make decisions. So going through that journey and making sure that you take those steps is incredibly important. And then the other thing is then connecting disparate systems, right? We have islands of automation out there, especially if you're transforming an older distribution center. You may have a variety of brands of WCSs, WESs. You have a lot of technology out there. WMS used to be the smartest system in the building. Now it's not. There's a lot of other systems that have information, like robots, right? They have they're AI based. Another system is here working independently. How do you wrangle it in and orchestrate along with your human workers and your fixed automation? You have to find a way to orchestrate that and connect those systems so that you have a central place. And we're starting to call it warehouse orchestration. So you might see systems arising that we say, this is a warehouse orchestration system, something that can integrate to everything out there, consume that data, and then make a decision. And that's going to include timekeeping systems, right? Does this system know where your resources are? Or they're clocked into this area, or they're working in the sorter. How can it tell you to balance that resource if it doesn't know where it is in the building? So you just have to start integrating all those as small as they are. If it's a decision point, if your human being thinks about that when they make a decision on where to send that person, that needs to be in part of your data model to get right. Lastly, I think you see these guys are incredibly smart. Sometimes I don't understand what they're talking about because they help us implement these systems. But it's also important that you have the business team as part of the project so that you can validate the answers. And I don't know if you guys caught this, and it's just sort of purposeful, but the model that we displayed, some of the numbers don't make sense. And if you're an operator and you look at those numbers, you're probably going, how do you unload 10 containers with 3 resources? Because that was the answer, right? And to me, I caught it. I said, well, that doesn't make sense. There's no way I could do that. So as you start to develop these things and you start going, I would say start small. And that was the purpose of having a very simple, straightforward answer. It's like, well, managing my shipping lanes on my outbound dock isn't that big of a deal, but it's a perfect place to start because you start to develop algorithms and solutions that you can validate very easily and very quickly. And then you start getting into the complexity of, hey, do I have a very complex set of orders that I can release today that's bouncing against my resources out there with my locust robots, or I may have a tool tray sorter. That starts to get very complex, and validating those answers just gets more difficult. So start small. Don't try to boil the ocean. Get something where somebody can look at it visually and say, that's right and that's wrong, where you don't have to go do a bunch of math to validate it. So, my recommendation.
I was just going to say that, with all the depth that we have entered into with data, you might be surprised what you can do nowadays with a list of Excel spreadsheets that you put in a history, right? I mean, you can more or less generate this data lake that you're talking about with just that historical set of spreadsheets that you may have somewhere in your Outlook. So, all we are trying to say here is that even if you think that you are not prepared, you might be a little bit more prepared than you think you are to start your AI conversation, but just be aware of the fact that data is going to be king. It's going to be extremely important for the success of your processes, particularly if you want to get into complex workflows, right? Workflows like this, it's just a simple integration with your warehouse management system. But once you start to work into something like predictive labor or even predictive maintenance, yes, that is going to be significantly more complicated on the data side.
No, thank you, Santiago. So we are talking about paper to platform. What is the platform we are trying to build here? The platform that we are trying to build here is the data platform. And who's going to build it? It's your data center of excellence. It's the data strategy people working with data engineering who are going to build that data platform, right? What is sitting on top of that platform? The things sitting on top of the platform are the data science and the data analytics use cases for your warehouse and your entire supply chain, right? So keep in mind that it's important to build that platform, build it right with all the right master data, governance, data quality, whatever is needed, right? And your data is right now locked in many different systems. These systems don't talk to each other. So building that data platform is the key to unlocking AI, ML, and analytics in the warehouse and everywhere else.
It's awesome. Thank you, guys. So, in the spirit of an interactive session, because we are at lunch, we'd love to open up questions from the audience. Oh, love it. The first hand. Can we use one of your mics? We can run it over to them. Oh, thanks, Rajiv.
Hi. Very interesting discussion. Thank you so much. I'm going back to the example that was given, the chat conversation, and I could see that the software was helping the manager take decisions. You know, how many people I require, how much equipment I require, how much time will I take, is there a need for cross-dock, and so on. Very important questions, but it looked like they could be answered based on a rule engine, right? There are specific data points and there are specific criteria to take those decisions. So I'm trying to understand where is the room for training a machine learning model and validating a decision, because every time it's going to be the same decision. Thank you.
Okay, so let me see if I can summarize your question. The question is, how much of this is actually AI and how much of it is just descriptive analytics? On this screen, on this AI. Yeah, by the way, thank you for the question. It's a perfect introduction for what I wanted to say, is that we do have some other dialogues and that you can go and take a look at. If you come to our booth, we'll show them to you. And on those dialogues, there will not only be descriptive analytics, we do have some predictive as well, but we wanted to make it as simple as possible, which is why we selected this dialogue here.
But there is LLM aspect to it, right? There are 50 reports in different formats. We feed it to a large language model, yeah, so that I don't have to go through the 50 different reports. The large language model goes through it, and then I ask it questions, right? Which makes things much faster. That's the first. Second is, I'll go back to what I said. It is not just about AI, ML, and Gen AI. You have to use combination of all of this. So rule-based engines working with AI, ML, Gen AI, and LLMs, all of it working together is really the key. And I think another aspect of it is, suppose there is a problem with labor, yeah? Now you got to rebalance things on the fly, okay? So a human being will try and figure things out, try and get all the data points, etc. But the large language model already is analyzing the data in real time. And you can train it in an agentic AI world to make that decision on your behalf. Or you can ask it, can you propose 2 or 3 different ways of doing it and choose the best way. So while we haven't shown exactly that use case where you can do what if analysis using agentic AI, because it's a bit more advanced concept, definitely has applicability in the warehouse industry.
Great. Thank you. Great question. Any other questions in the audience?
And just one data input, right? I mean, one of the key elements of what agents are capable of doing is integrating data sources that may be spread all over your systems. And even if it is just descriptive analytics, just a business intelligence report, just the fact that it is integrating all those systems and putting them in the same place is just a huge amount of value for warehouse managers, right? Because they will not have to go and navigate through the multiple systems to get the data they want.
Anybody else? Oh, right. Nice.